Hey, hello user, how are you?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, now you are audible. So we can start?
Yeah, sure, we can.
Okay, so first of all, how are you?
I'm fine, Harsh.
Yeah, okay. So today I'm taking your Node.js interview. Okay. So first of all, we can start with the some JavaScript part and then we can move forward to the Node.js question. Okay. So user, first of all, give me a brief intro about yourself, like total how many years of you have experience and total how many project you have done so far. So yeah, go ahead with your introduction part.
So, good morning, Harsh. First of all, I have 3 years of experience in stack development, which includes React.js, Node.js, and I have worked with other JavaScript technologies also like Vue.js. I have done my MCA since last 3.5 years. I'm working with JavaScript technologies, which includes stack.
Okay,
And when I say about working with projects, in overall my 3+ years of journey, worked with 4 to 5 client based projects.
yeah, you are audible. Okay, so we can start with the JavaScript part. Okay,
So,
so user, first of all, tell me the difference between let, where, and const.
so let, where, and const, three of them are used to declare a variable in JavaScript. Starting with where is used for global scope, where its scope is not limited to any particular block. Whereas we talk about let and const were introduced in ES6. In ES6, let is a function scope variable where its limitations is particularly limited to that block of function only, to that block of function scope only. And we talk about const. Once a const variable we declare a variable with const keyword, then we cannot reinitialize it. Whereas with let and where we can reinitialize the variable. Const is also block scope.
Okay, great. So what is the temporal dead zone in JavaScript?
Temporal dead zone is generally used in reference to hoisting. Hoisting is a term in JavaScript where we can, declare the variable before we can initialize the variable before declaring it. Generally, it's used with while let and const. But since when we declare or we initialize a value in a variable before declaring it with let or const keyword, it gives us the temporal dead zone error. That's the main thing.
Okay. Tell me the difference between spread operator versus rest operator.
Spread and rest operator both were introduced in ES6. They both have three dot syntax with the variable name. The main difference between spread and rest is that spread is used to accumulate the array or join the array values, whereas rest operator is used to differentiate or um, mean differentiate or just differentiate the array values. Generally, it is used with functional arguments. That's the main difference.
Okay. So tell me difference between arrow function and the normal function.
Arrow function were also introduced in ES6. Okay. The main difference is that arrow function has a different keyword with in reference to normal function. In normal function, you write the function keyword, then the function name. In arrow functions, we declare the function name with the const keyword. Then it has syntax. It has different syntax than the normal function using JavaScript. The main other difference is that we cannot initialize or use these pointers with arrow functions, or whereas we can use this pointer or this variable with normal function.
Okay. Can you please share your screen and open any JavaScript compiler?
Yeah, sure. Where's my screen visible?
Yeah, your screen is visible. Open in JavaScript compiler. Okay. So can you tell me the difference between deep copy and shallow copy? And give me the example here.
Okay, so main difference is the deep copy and shallow copy. For example, we do these both are used with objects and arrays in JavaScript. Deep copy and shallow copy. When we copy a object into another object. First of all, objects and arrays are passed by reference. Okay, so when we copy one array or object value into into another variable, its reference is copied. Okay, so for example, if we change a particular object, then a copy of the object would also be changed. For example, at least.
Okay. Give me any example.
Yeah, sure. Okay,
Okay.
we have copied object one into object two. Okay,
Okay.
now I change the value of object two. Okay. Now if we print object one and object two, both both values would be x, y, and z. Okay. So since this is object and this is passed by reference, okay, we
Okay.
have copied this value to object two. So it's passed by reference. Its address will be copied to object. Whatever we value change in object two, its the original object will also be changed. That's the main difference. Okay. Now here comes deep copy and shallow copy. Shallow copy is used to it helps us with not changing the original value of the array. For example, if we change object one and object two, it, the shallow copy is created for object two.
Okay.
So a different reference will be created in the memory. Now, if we change the value of object two, then the value of object two would only be changed, and object one would not be changed. But this is only for the parent object. If
Okay.
it is a nested object, and if we change the value of right.
Okay.
So now object one and object two's both numbers would be changed. Okay. So shell copy only works for the parent objects, not for the nested objects embedded in it. So here comes the concept of deep copy. All right, where we use I mean we deep copy object, so its nested values also remain same in the original object or array. It doesn't change.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the main difference.
Okay. Great. So tell me like what is the promises in JavaScript and why we use?
Promises are basically objects in JavaScript. Promises are generally used for handling asynchronous operations in JavaScript. It has three main stages: promise, which is pending, fulfilled, or rejected. Promise can be solved. Promise can be executed in two ways. Either the promise, if it's fulfilled, it's resolved, or if a promise is not fulfilled or it has not been fulfilled, it's rejected. We use reject method for that. So resolve, reject. These are two methods which with help of we can use a promise. And once the promise is fulfilled, we can execute it with two other ways. With help of async await or dot then dot get. These both are ways with help of promises are executed in JavaScript.
Okay. So which one you prefer for the API call, promises or async await, and why?
Okay, so it depends particularly on the use case. Async await are the modern syntactic sugars which were introduced in ES6. Uh, so basically, for clean code and for code maintainability, generally async await are used, right? But
Okay.
there are certain use cases like we need to, simultaneously or parallelly call some APIs. There are certain promise methods like all settled, raised, any. These all are promise method. Depending on the use cases, we can, implement this promise methods. Then we can use this promise methods instead of async await. So it mainly depends what kind of use cases we are working and what kind of business logics we need to perform.
Okay, great. So what are the closure function in JavaScript?
Alright, so closure functions gives us the access to use the variables or the functions declared outside the body. For example, we have a common function and we have a nested function. There are some variables used in that parent function. And we need to use that variables in the child function. The closures gives us the ability to access those variables declared in the parent function to use it in the child function.
Okay, okay. And tell me like what are the generator function in JavaScript?
Generator functions in JavaScript. Oh, okay. Basically, generator functions are used change a particular value during function execution. It is generally used with the yield keyword, where, for example, a function is executed during execution time, its value is changed.
Okay. And tell me the difference between call, apply, and bind method in JavaScript.
All apply and bind methods are also one of the main JavaScript concepts. These three methods are used to, use certain methods of a particular object into another object. It's generally used for usability of certain methods. For example, call method is generally executes a method of one object into another object. Similarly, like the apply method is used, the difference is only that apply method returns the array of accepts the array of arguments, whereas call method only accepts one particular argument at a time. And bind methods generally uses functions to execute the methods used in another object.
Okay. So user, I'm giving you one task. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to create one function that take one string as an input and return the object with the count of each character. So I'm giving you one example in your chat box. So create one function. Okay. And inside that function, you can take this string as an argument and your output will be look like this, like this. Got it, my question?
Okay, so this we need to return how much a
Yeah,
particular letter
count
is.
of each character.
Yeah, sure. All right. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm, 1 minute. Yeah, great. Okay. So actually, I'm done with the JavaScript part. So we can start with the Node.js part. Okay.
okay,
वीडियो में आगे बढ़ने से पहले यहाँ पर एक अपडेट देना चाहूँगा। मेरा एक कोर्स है कंप्लीट मंस्टैक ई कॉमर्स प्रोजेक्ट। ये 30+ आवर्स का एक कोर्स रहेगा फ्रंट एंड बैक एंड डेटाबेस एंड डिप्लॉयमेंट के साथ। तो स्क्रीन पर जो आप लोगों को कूपन कोड दिखाया गया है उसका आप यूज़ कर सकते हैं। आप लोगों को फ्लैट 40% का जो डिस्काउंट है वो यहाँ पर मिल जाएगा। आप लोग एक बार यहाँ पर उसका जो भी सिलेबस है वो चेक कर सकते हैं। और यहाँ पर मैंने 35 मिनट का इंट्रोडक्शन वीडियो यहाँ पर दिया हुआ है फ्री में, तो आप लोग उसको चेक कर सकते हैं। यहाँ पर आपको बैकएंड, एडमिन, यूजर मॉड्यूल, रिडक्स टूलकिट, फ्रंट एंड साइड सब कुछ यहाँ पर आप लोगों को एक एक चीज पेमेंट गेटवे, डिप्लॉयमेंट एंड सोर्स कोड के साथ आप लोगों को मिल जाएंगी। तो जल्दी से जाइए और स्क्रीन पर जो कूपन कोड दिखाया हुआ था उसका यूज करके आप लोग इस कोर्स को परचेस कर सकते हैं। फ्लैट 40% डिस्काउंट मिल जाएगा। Okay, so first of all, tell me like what is event loop in JavaScript?
okay. So event loop is event loop. We can say that event Node.js is a single-threaded language. But with help of event loop, we can execute asynchronous programming.
Okay,
Um, it has event queue, call stack, and all that. With help of that, it makes us Node.js to execute asynchronous operations.
okay. So tell me the difference between synchronous and asynchronous function.
Okay, so synchronous the main difference is that, for example, a synchronous function is executed one after another. For example, there are three lines to be executed, A, B, and C. So if they are synchronous in nature, then first A will be executed. Then after A is executed successfully, then B would be executed, then C would be executed. But it's different with asynchronous operations. Asynchronous operations are executed parallelly. For example, there are three asynchronous functions A, B, and C. Then they would be executed parallelly. It won't wait for one function to be executed, then another function would be started. No, it's not like that. All the three of the functions would be executed parallelly in nature. That's the main difference.
Okay, great. And tell me what is the middleware in Node.js?
A middleware is generally used for validations, for authentication, authorization, and performing certain kind of custom validations between a request or a response. It's they are middlewares.
Okay, and tell me like what are the streams in Node.js?
Streams.
Yeah.
Streams generally are used for file operations in Node.js, where we need to write the data or read the data and perform certain file operations. If there the stream plays the very important role, it add those data, or generally they used to play with files where a stream is used.
Okay. So suppose I want to upload the 1 or 2 GB like file in our server, then how you can handle this large amount file?
Okay, so to basically upload 1 or 2 GB files, it depends on what kind of server we are using. All right. First, we need to write those datas, the files, and create that file. Generally, these files are created with help of streams or buffers, and depending on what kind of servers we use, for example, EC2 or AWS or Nginx, depending on the servers, there are certain inbuilt methods and SDKs we have with every language, Node, Go, PHP, Java. With help of these methods and with help of these packages, we can upload a particular file on a particular uh, server. For example, S3 bucket is there in AWS where we upload tons of GBs of files or any kind of any type of files. So there is a AWS SDK we get with Node.js with help of the AWS SDK and certain inbuilt S3 bucket methods we can upload that file in
So,
S3.
okay, so like your server will be handle 2 or 3 GB file in one time uploading. Are you sure?
Server, it depends on what kind of server we use. Okay. If we use servers like AWS or Azure, yeah, they can handle this kind of thing.
Actually, user, whenever you upload like this is large amount of file, your server will be crash. So the solution is you need to upload the file in chunk by chunk data. Okay, got it my question?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, actually that's why I asking you on the streams.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
told that
we
streams is
use the
used for
streams.
read and write
Yeah,
operations.
yeah.
Yes. So I told it depends on the server. All right. Okay. We
Okay,
need to upload it somewhere.
okay. And have you worked with any like social login, Google login, Facebook login, and any other?
I work with Google Login and Azure AD Login, Microsoft
So
Login.
can you explain me like how you integrate inside the our Node.js application Google login part?
But yeah, that to work with Google Authentication or Microsoft Authentication, any kind of this third-party authentication things, there are certain ready-made npm packages available with it. We need to study the documentation first. For example, if we want to, Google use Google Authentication, we need to create an account with GCP. There are certain series and steps and processes we need to follow
Okay.
to create a particular service in Google. Same with Azure when it comes to Microsoft authentication. And depending on Microsoft or Google, there are certain inbuilt Azure SDK methods, or we can say Google authentication methods. With help of these methods, we can log in. Generally, for this kind of authentication logging, we need to study the documentation first. Then we need to use these cloud services like Google or Azure, and then we can use those SDKs in Node.js to log in.
So like which framework are you prefer for the Node.js? Express.js or Nest.js?
It certainly depends on the use case. Also, Express.js is for Express.js we need to write a lot of code from scratch. But with help of Nest.js, it's an inbuilt framework like Angular. It's an MVC based framework with which has a proper structure maintained, and we need to follow the proper structure. And we get a lot of ready-made things with Node.js. So it also depends on developers and on the project requirements, what kind of things we need and we do not need, and then based on that we can decide what framework to go with.
Okay. So like how do you manage the like multiple role in one single table?
Multiple role in a single
Suppose
table.
let's suppose you have implement one e-commerce platform, and in their e-commerce platform like you have like super admin user and like one of the vendor. So like how you manage all of the like role in one single table?
Okay, are we talking about SQL database or no SQL?
uh,
Depends on what which type of data
I'm
schema
asking
we
you
are.
generally in the Like any collection or table, you can give me the answer.
So every particular role, there are set of roles defined, all right, in any particular website. So we need to go with the role-based authentication for that. For example, if there is super admin or a user, admin role type is defined in every particular table. So based on that admin role type, we can perform certain role-based authentication and authorization. And based on that, we can decide what to give access and what user not to give access. This is a very simple way.
Okay. So like how you like optimize the performance in Node.js part?
For whose optimization for what?
Like getting the response very faster.
If we're using database, we can use indexes. Okay.
Okay.
We need to optimize the queries. Well, we use SQL or NoSQL database. And if we are not retrieving data from the database and we are using certain business logic, to generate our own data, or then we need to optimize the code. All right. And
Okay.
if we find out that our Node.js application has a lot of a lot of tasks to perform and it's become slow, then we can use certain child processes or worker threads at this point of time to make our Node.js application faster and more optimized.
Okay. And what is the difference between process.nextTick and set immediate?
Okay, so the process dot next tick is executed at the end of an event loop. All right. It is executed before set immediate, whereas set immediate method is executed after a particular event loop cycle finishes.
Okay. And have you worked with any payment gateway?
Yes, I work with certain payment gateways. There is a payment gate integration called Paystack. Alright, our client was from Sweden and his main business was in African countries. It was a podcasting platform, same like Spotify, and he needed to integrate a payment integration website where he would calculate how much amount will the creator of the podcaster would be get, how much a how much amount the company would be earned from it. So for that, we had integrated the Paystack payment integration.
Okay. And how do you handle the real-time communication in Node.js?
Real-time communication can be handled with certain kind of event.
Yeah.
There are certain kind of, event queues or certain kind of event execution method like Kafka, Redis and RabbitMQ, Kafka, Apache. Then Socket is there for that applications. This are certain kind of eventation pops up method with help of we can use real time
Okay.
handling.
And what are worker thread in Node.js?
Worker threads. So generally, Node.js is designed for handling. The single thread is generally used for IO bound applications, and there are
Okay.
certain times there are intensive CPU intensive tasks performed with Node.js, which makes Node.js application perform slow. So in this, worker threads play a role, all right, where we can use certain CPU based computing for perform certain CPU based computations help of this kind of worker threads.
Okay. And inside the Node.js, which architecture you prefer for the building the our backend part, like a monolithic architecture and microservice architecture?
So it's a debatable topic, monolithic or microservices, but it's generally it depends on what kind of business we are making the project, or and also depends on the use case. For example, we do not have a lot of dependency on each other, and the project is limited and it doesn't have a lot of scope and it's small, and we can prefer monolithic architecture. Whereas if the project is big and we have an enterprise level project where we need to make different services to make it more scalable and make it more user friendly, at that time for in this type of scenarios, microservice architecture is preferred where one service is dependent on another and all services are independent to each
Okay. Great. Can you like just write down the code of the like how we can create the basic server in the Node.js part? You can remove this code and you need to like write down the code for the basic server.
other. A very basic Node.js application
Yeah.
that I would like to create with the Express. Okay.
Uh, can you please perform without Express?
No, I'm sorry. Uh,
Okay, no worry. Go ahead with the Express. No worry.
there are certain packages apart from Express also. I need to revisit the syntax for that. But we use force packages, body parser for that. And with help of this, we use a callback method in Express. I'm not sure what it is, and we create a server. So this method has a port, and for example, the port is 3000. The server would run on 3000 port.
Okay. So have you worked with microservice architecture, right?
No, I haven't worked with Express architecture till date.
Okay, no worry. Mm, so like what is body parser in Node.js?
Body parts are generally alright. Body parts in reference to Express.
Hello?
So, alright, okay. So, body parser generally is we can say it's a kind of middleware that parses incoming request bodies and makes them available as an object in the request.
Okay. Can you tell me like what is the use of file system module in Node.js?
File system module is generally used with FS module. In Node.js, it's generally used to write certain datas in files or read certain datas in files. It's generally used with playing with files at code level.
Okay. And which database are you currently working on with the Node.js?
Currently working with Postgres and MySQL database in Node.js.
So can you just write down the code here like connection of the Postgres with the Node.js?
It depends on what kind of ORM we use. Okay, there are certain ORMs in Node.js. We use with this kind of SQL databases like there is SQLized type ORM, Prisma. I
Okay,
work
you
with
can
S3
write,
ORM.
you can use the SQLize and
I do not
the
know the syntax. Okay, I need to revisit the syntax for all this, and only I
okay,
can write the connection.
okay, no worry. So have you implemented like authentication part in your Node.js application?
Yes, I have implemented authentication from my Node.js application.
Yeah, so can you explain me like how it works and which
Generally,
yeah,
generally, there are various methods to do authentication authorization in a particular backend application. We can use with help of session and cookies. We can use with help of tokens, but mostly with Node.js we use JWT tokens, JSON Web Tokens, where we have a key and the user information is encrypted in that particular token known as JWT token. and then we create a middleware to access certain APIs, certain endpoints for that for a particular endpoint in Node.js.
Okay.
So, for example, there is a basic scenario where we need to, register, or if a user needs to log in a website, then only he can use the website. During the login time, we write the user information. He checks for the particular user credentials. And once the user is authorized, he can log in the website. A particular token is generated, and then we store the token in a header, and all other endpoints before accessing those endpoints. A middleware is created where the token is tagged, and if the token is valid, then only the user can access that particular API.
Okay. Okay, great. And have you worked with the WebSocket part?
With what?
WebSocket?
WebSocket is I work with WebSocket. WebSocket is generally used for it's also one kind of POP-sub method where there is a sender and a receiver and a channel is created. Generally used for chat applications.
Okay. And what is callback hell?
Before promises were introduced in JavaScript, we callback is a method where a function is passed as an argument to another function. The one function is embedded into another function. This kind of nested functions are created. So generally, for performing asynchronous operation, this type of callback methods were used. The problem was that one function was one function was nested into another function. And for example, if a particular function broke, and then there was a chain of functions in it, so it would resemble in a particular callback help. So it was also known as pyramid of doom. So to overcome this, promises were introduced in JavaScript.
Okay. So tell me the difference between promise.all and promise.all settled method.
Okay, so the very basic difference between promise.all and all settled is, for example, there are 3 to 4 promises we need to, execute parallelly for performing certain kind of operations. So, promise, uses either fulfill state or reject state. So, either a promise was fulfilled or rejected, or this all methods were executed. For example, there are 4 promises, and we perform promise.all method. Then either promise is fulfilled or rejected. This all promise methods were executed. So if a promise is rejected also, then it would have thrown an error. It would have been fecal. So there comes the role of promise it all settled. A promise it all settled would only, execute those promises which are settled and which are fulfilled. The rejected promise won't be executed in this method. When we use all promise it all settled method, this is the main difference.
Okay. So, okay, user, I think that's all from my side. So, if you have any question, you can ask me.
No, I don't have any question yet.
Okay, no worry. I will get back to you if you are selected for this round. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.